So here we are in the second part of the exhibition, and this part of the exhibition is called New Impressions. Why is it called that? These are 4 artists who use print. Like the artists upstairs, they use screen printing and etching, but in a very, very different way. And let's look at Fiona Kelly's work, where she makes her prints she makes them into sculptures. Imagine the idea of making something that we usually think of as flat into a piece of sculpture. How does she do that? Well, she is really interested in what is left behind in places, particularly in building sites and in skips. And she takes things from building sites, she takes the leftover things, the things that are thrown away. And in this instance, she makes little houses from discarded pieces of plywood, and she prints images of the natural world on these houses. So we have a house that has grasses, like a meadow on it. We have a house that has the sea printed on it. We have a house that has rock formations by the seaside printed on them. But also on these houses, she has also printed the word fragile. And what is she telling us? She is telling us that our environment is fragile. We need to mind it and keep it clean and nurture our world so that it is a good world for us, it's a good world for our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. Imagine thinking that far ahead. So this is what this artist, Fiona Kelly, is telling us. Now, Fiona also, let's look at this big piece here. In this piece, what does it remind you of? It's very like a hoarding that we see around a building site. It's made of timber. And look at the image. Oh, it's untidy, there's things thrown everywhere. The next time that you're walking past a building site, or maybe the edge of the car park, and you'll see a lot of discarded pieces of rubble, pieces of timber, maybe pieces of litter, of rubbish. But you'll also see plants coming through, just growing up and bringing their own beauty into this just messy place. So all is not lost, and nature always finds its space, and nature will help us to overcome the damage that has been done to our environment by too much building, by too much concrete, by not allowing nature to come and work and live with us. Also, let's look at Margot Galvin. Margot's work is also about a sense of place. All these artists are all about our sense of place. But Margot is very interested in architecture and how we see pieces of architecture that, not beautiful buildings, but pieces of architecture that tell us and show us where we are. So in this particular exhibit here, Margot has printed a water tower and the side of a building. And in between she has other pieces of other sculpture-like pieces where she has screen printed colours and shapes onto metal and glass that remind us of the colours that we see in our urban environment. Bright, strong colours, not soft, subdued colour like we see in the countryside, but stronger, brighter colour that we see on billboards, on advertising, on the sides of buildings. And The materials that Margot uses are those that we associate with architecture and the built environment, our cities, our towns, like glass, metal, timber, and particularly metal. And if you look at her work, you can see how she is influenced by new buildings, office blocks, maybe schools. And think about the colours and the shapes and see if you can see them in your environment as you walk around maybe the centre here in Blanchardstown or any urban centre. So again, Margot, like Fiona, is very interested in our sense of place. What makes our place special and what is our place and how we know it is our home. And here we have Neil Dunne. These are prints, but he also uses painting. And Neil is really, really interested in, again, the urban landscape. And he's very interested in what we see as we walk around the city or walk around the town. He's interested in billboards and what happens when the rain and the wind and the weather affects billboards. He's interested in how they decay, how they are eroded, and he's also really interested in graffiti. And we see a lot of graffiti around the place on the sides of buildings. He's interested in the marks that the weather makes on surfaces and the marks that we as humans make on surfaces. He's also interested in the things you find. So if you're walking along the road and you might see an interesting piece of timber, or maybe somebody has lost an earring or a necklace. In this particular piece here, which Neil has screen printed some areas, and then he has painted with big, broad brush strokes in other areas, he's also included a piece of found timber and a necklace with a medal on it. So these are the things that we see, these are the things that we find, and you could make a painting and include things that you find in your work as well. That could be really interesting, really interesting. And you could also use spray paint, like this graffiti here, and drips to show you what you see on your walk as you go to school, or as you drive to town, or as you drive to visit your family. You're stopped in traffic. What do you see when you're stopped in traffic looking out the window? What do you see? What colours do you see? And Neil, like all the other artists in this exhibition, they explore the urban landscape through their work, and they use the urban landscape to influence their painting, their printmaking, and their art making. Now let's have a look at Aoife Scott's work. She too is a printmaker, and when we look at her prints, they look very similar to the prints upstairs. They look like paintings, they're on the wall. But as we look closer at them, we see that she has collaged pieces of plastic into her prints, where she has stuck little bits of plastic all over the surface of them. She has used pieces of plastic in her screen print. And everywhere we go, we see plastic. We see it on the street. We're trying to recycle. Plastic is everywhere. It's on our beaches. It's in the gutters. It's flying around the place on a windy day. Sometimes it's very beautiful. Sometimes the colours are lovely. Sometimes the shapes are interesting. But is it good? No. So Aoife is very interested in the effects of plastic on us as an environment and on our physical environment. How it's ugly and it takes a long time to break down, and it destroys the beauty of our natural environment. When you look at some of her prints, particularly these long prints, the colour is very beautiful, the shapes are very alluring, and then we look closer and we realise that no, it's not printed on something like material or very fine paper, it's actually printed on plastic. Does that influence how we look at the piece? Do we dismiss it because it's on plastic, or do we still think it's beautiful? And this is what Aoife is always asking us to look at. She also has three-dimensional pieces. What looks like a thrown-away milk bottle, all squished up, a thrown-away soft drinks bottle. But let's look in the inside, and there are little bits of plastic from toys, from packaging. There's a little piece of Lego, some styrofoam, all those horrible bits of plastic that are clogging up our systems, that are killing a lot of our wildlife. But they do look beautiful, and their colours are very, very, very alluring. Again, Aoife is asking us to look at what is thrown away, what we throw away, and what do we do about it. So here she is, making art from discarded rubbish and asking us the question of how we live our lives, what we do with our rubbish, and how will we continue to make these unsustainable things, but they're actually quite beautiful colour-wise as well.